Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Wraith and welcome to another episode of My Open World. Today I'll be talking about games that caught my eye during E3 2017. There are exactly 30 games in this list and I'll be talking a little bit about them all. To clarify, this is an arbitrary list, so it's not a list to say you have to follow or have interest in these games. It's just my personal list of games that I felt were interesting. If you have any games that you liked at E3 2017, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see if there's anything I didn't have on the list or if there's anything on the list that you also liked. There will be gameplay and trailer links to each game in the description or pinned in the comments, so check them out to see more and to get a better idea of what I was watching when I added these games to the list. So first game on the list is A Way Out. The concept for this one is really interesting. It's a full co-op only Prison Break game and it can be played in either split screen or online. Even when you're playing online, it's still actually a split screen experience from what I'm aware of. I like that the developers are incorporating split screen into the gameplay mechanics as well as the cinematics. I might not try this one though because it needs a co-op partner and that's going to be a bit difficult for me to find someone who has the time to play. But it caught my eye for a very good reason. The second game is Star Wars Battlefront 2. I didn't play the first one because it was primarily a competitive FPS, but this one has a campaign. The campaign alone is enough to intrigue me, but the gameplay footage I saw had me hooked. It was freaking insane, and I saw the lightsaber Jedi Sith mechanics, which looked pretty good. I wouldn't say they look better than The Force Unleashed, but it's going to be hard to say until I can actually play it and get a feel for what it's like. It also seems like EA are opting for a different business model of not fucking you in the ass this time. Vampyr is another game on the list, and from what I've seen in the gameplay vids, Vampyr might, and that's a big might, be the Vampyr game I've been waiting a decade for. It really depends on whether it has stealth mechanics or not. What's got me hooked is that in the vid that I saw, the dude was zipping around in like a mist-like form and teleporting between areas and stuff, which I found really cool. Hopefully Dontnod will be the ones to finally bring us a good Vampyr game for this generation of consoles, and hopefully they'll set the bar high from here onwards. Assassin's Creed Origins. The combat looks like you're more agile and the eagle is now used as a scout. I think the eagle should have been a scout tool from the very first Assassin's Creed game. It also looks like they've added some more RPG or some more in-depth RPG mechanics, and I kind of like that. It suits this type of game surprisingly well. What worries me is the nerfed stealth mechanics. Less one-hit kills is a major concern for any stealthy player. It does look like they've taken a few good mechanics from their other games and chucked them into Origins as they usually do, but that's not necessarily a bad thing for me. Egypt was a country I was infatuated with as a child. It was one of the most advanced ancient civilizations and their mythology was always intriguing. Unfortunately, I've forgotten most of my studies revolving around Egypt. Origins might very well be the same reskinned game, but I'm not passing up an opportunity to explore an iteration of ancient Egypt. Metro Exodus. I bought Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light during a sale, then 1 year later I bought the Redux pack when it was discounted. To this day, I still haven't played them. And I keep kicking myself each time I start playing another game instead. It's like, oh, I should play Metro, but I want to play this as well. Exodus looks just as interesting as the others did, and what's got my attention even more is that it's open world. I've always felt, despite not playing them yet, that Metro was the previous and current generation's spiritual successor for the Stalker franchise, and this is no surprise considering some of the dev team is made up of previous Stalker developers. Middle-earth Shadow of War. I think the Nemesis system in Shadow of Mordor fell a bit short on offering enough of a dynamic experience, which resulted in the inevitable repetitiveness. Shadow of War will supposedly expand on the Nemesis system, so hopefully it's more dynamic from start to finish. Nothing has got me hooked quicker than seeing Talion riding one of those Nazgul Wyverns or a Drake, whatever you call them. I honestly don't need to see any more gameplay than that to know I'll like the game. However, I am watching videos they're showcasing. Unfortunately, I myself won't be able to showcase it since Warner Brothers are definitely, they're actually not YouTube friendly. So it might not be a day one purchase for me. Anthem. This one really surprised me, and it was probably one of my favorites from E3 this year. The part where the chick was flying after jumping off that mountain cliff was freaking insane, and that instantly had me hooked. It looks like a good combination of Halo meets Horizon meets MechWarrior, with a little bit of like Borderlands and Destiny mixed in there as well. Unfortunately, I do have some concerns about it being a shared world game. This means even if you want to play by yourself, it will be an always online game, which is kind of an excuse for always online DRM. Either way, I am intrigued. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Another franchise where I purchased the first game and never got around to playing it. The Will of the Wisps intrigued me as much as the first with its hybrid 2D, 3D graphics. I can't wait to play them both sometime, and I can only wish that I had more time to play the first one now. State of Decay 2. This one was actually one of my eye catchers from last year, and if you watch my video from last year's E3, you'll know I'm not overly fond of the developers and the way they treated the owners of the original State of Decay. Naturally, this has me cautious, and from what I've seen of the gameplay from State of Decay 2, it's not that impressive, but if you don't know me by now, then you should know if it's an open world game, then I'm definitely intrigued. I'll be monitoring this one to see if it's heavily different from the previous one. I think if you haven't played the first one, this one will probably be a good one to play. Dishonored 2, Death of the Outsider DLC. I loved Dishonored 2. I didn't think it would be as good as the first one, but somehow Arkane Studios made it better. I don't think I got to play much of the DLC in the first one, and I probably won't play this one on the day it's released. Maybe I will, depends on how busy I am. But it's an expansion for Dishonored 2, so what could be more eye-catching than that? Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus, or Wolfenstein if you want to pronounce it in a more Western way. Once again, I've purchased the first two. Naturally, I haven't played them yet, but I really want to. The trailer and footage for Wolfenstein 2 looked amazing. I particularly liked the part where some dude with a robot arm was trying to eat a cookie, and he just started smacking himself in the face because the arm malfunctioned, and the gameplay looks violent. Beautifully violent. The part where he axed the dude in the butt and just hitting him, oh man, it was violent. It was beautifully violent. Skull and Bones. If there's any game that's done pirate ship combat well, it was Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Ubisoft are clearly taking a lot of mechanics from Black Flag and implementing them in Skull and Bones. Despite being a PvP competitive game only, which aren't always my thing, it still makes it on my list of eye catchers because it actually looks pretty good. Far Cry 5. Despite the level of backlash with the setting and theme on this one, Ubisoft is still going forward with it. I like the concept of Far Cry 5, and I like that they're taking away towers completely this time, along with the radar. Far Cry for me has always been done really well to make you feel like a badass, and this looks like it's no exception. What's got my attention even more is that this time around you can actually play the full campaign in co-op. On top of this, they've added a buddy system that's reminiscent of Metal Gear Solid The Phantom Pains, so I'm kind of eager to try that out a little bit. Beyond Good and Evil 2. Once again, I have Beyond Good and Evil 1, but have yet to play it. I knew the second one was rumored to be in the works, and finally it's been confirmed. Despite not playing the first, the trailer for Beyond Good and Evil 2 definitely helped to catch my eye. The trailer looked awesome. I honestly think they could have actually made a CGI movie, and I'd be glued to the screen watching it, because the trailer was just that good. It had that right level of corniness, it had that level of immaturity, it seemed like a little childish, but very mature at the same time. It was really cool. I'm eager to see some gameplay in the future, and I'm definitely eager to try the first one out. I might even grab the HD version and play that. South Park, The Fractured But Whole. Another title that caught my eye from E3 2016, but now we're seeing some more gameplay footage. It looks damn good, but now I'm actually worried that this one will be even more censored in Australia than the first one was. Oddly, South Park actually incorporates one of my most avoided game mechanics, which is turn-based gameplay, but if it's anything that can reel me into playing a genre I don't like more than anything, it's a South Park game. Days Gone. This is another one from one of my E3 2016 eye catchers. I was hooked the first time around, and I'm just as hooked now. The cinematics and the gameplay are looking great, along with the visuals. I would like to see more of the open world gameplay though. Everything we've seen so far has looked mission-based. The open world mechanics will be my deciding factor on whether this one's a day one buy or pass for later. I'm hoping and expecting for a fairly living, breathing open world with seemingly random scenarios. Shadow of the Colossus. I never played this game the first time around, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. Not only that, it's always been the benchmark for comparing games that involve titans or giants as bosses. From what I've seen, the visuals look good and the gameplay looked really interesting. And as far as I'm aware, this is a remake and not a remaster, so that's even more promising. Monster Hunter World. I wasn't actually as impressed as I could be by the gameplay footage. This is possibly because it was edited with way too many jump cuts for what you'd like in a gameplay trailer. But I've always wanted to play a Monster Hunter game and never really had the chance because they've always been on Nintendo. What caught my attention the most in the footage was the stealth, so I'm eager to see more on that. I'll need to see more footage to get a better idea of whether I might get this one or not. God of War. Again, another title from one of my eye catchers of E3 2016. Getting to see more gameplay footage has only solidified this as a day one purchase for me, assuming I'm not too busy. I really like the idea of Kratos being a dad again, and this time it seems like he is taking his son along for the journey. It does look fresh and does look like Kratos has some new weapons which I'm eager to try out. I was actually sad when they ended the trilogy by the time it hit PS3, because it's when the game could have been pushed further. I think they milked the franchise a bit with the filler titles, but this should be the God of War we all knew and loved. I'm hoping they make a few separate trilogies based on different mythologies as well. And can you take a guess at what mythology I might want them to do next? Spider-Man, another title that was one of my eye catchers of E3 2016. I mentioned I played nearly every Spider-Man game from the PS1 era onwards, all the main Spider-Man games, and I've enjoyed most of them. The gameplay footage for this title has me hooked big time. I can see why a lot of people are making comparisons to the Arkham franchise, but I think the confusion is coming more from unfamiliarity with the Spider-Man character. The stealth mechanics are definitely reminiscent of the Arkham franchise, but the combat is pretty much like old school Spider-Man games, just fresher and more refined. I actually like the way they've done his spider senses this time. In previous Spider-Man games, you just got a little icon above Spidey's head, whereas now it's like more around the people that are actually going to attack you. Regardless, this is looking like a day one purchase for me as well. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. It's a standalone expansion for Uncharted 4 as far as I know, so what else needs to be said? Watch the linked footage. Seriously. Horizon Zero Dawn: The Frozen Wilds. One of the things I think that held Horizon Zero Dawn back was the lack of a living, breathing world. On top of this, the environment was unnecessarily hostile, but it was a really good game, and hopefully this DLC will add a little bit more breathing room to the environment, but I highly doubt it. If anything, I think it's just going to make things more hostile. I'm eager to see where this expansion takes Aloy, yet I still haven't finished the last mission of the game. Super Mario Odyssey. I don't think I've ever been as intrigued and impressed with the Mario game as much as I have with Odyssey. I like the way you could transform into different objects or characters, and it looked like the levels were very open and wide as well. It looks like they've freshened up the Mario franchise a little bit with this one. I probably won't be getting it as I don't have a Switch, and probably won't get one unless I can find one for around the $30 to $50 mark in a good few years. Because of Nintendo's attitude towards content creators, I just can't make the time for them. In fact, I probably can't even show any footage of it in the background because I'd probably get slammed with Content ID claims left, right and center on a video, including other games they don't even own the copyrights to. But I am capable of putting my biases aside to acknowledge that this title is definitely an eye-catcher. Ashen. I was reading an article on Game Informer and the first sentence describing Ashen had the words open world in it. But that wasn't the only thing that interested me. It was the concept of being a world that doesn't have a sun. The only light comes from illuminated ash that covers the world. The low poly visuals looked great, the gameplay and combat looked good. I'm really eager to see what Aurora 44 deliver with this. It definitely looks like it could be something somewhat different for open world games. Dauntless. This one is a game I've had on my radar for a very long time, pretty much since it was announced. As I mentioned prior, I've always wanted to play a Monster Hunter game, and since they were sticking to Nintendo, one could only hope for a game like Dauntless to come along, and it has. The concept is about what you'd expect. You hunt monsters. The only thing that worries me and raises a few red flags is that it's free to play, and it already has these Founders Packs listed on their website. If it ends up being a grindfest or having too much content gated behind paywalls, I might not bother. Either way, it's interesting enough to have caught my eye, so it's on the list. Frostpunk is another title I've had on my radar for a good few months. The concept of building a city and having to make decisions which can risk the lives of both adults and children makes this an extremely intriguing game. I do own this War of Mine, which is by the same developers, but I have yet to play it. I know, I'm horrible at keeping up, I just don't have time to play 50 million games at the same time. Well, I mean, I do play like maybe 10 different games at the same time, and then it ends up taking me longer than it should to finish them, but it's because I'm showcasing most of them on this channel anyways. I haven't seen any gameplay, but I am actually hoping this one is a third-person game, but usually city-building games aren't. The trailer looked good though, and it's caught my eye, but I do need to see a bit more. Super Lucky's Tale. This one isn't really bringing anything too different to the table, but it looks like an interesting little platformer that I wouldn't mind playing. The gameplay footage looked good. I don't think I'll get it day one though, but it's definitely something I want to play. Sundered. I'm still somewhat newish to Metroidvania games. Probably the most notable I have ever played was Guacamelee, but I do like the style of the genre. Sundered reminds me a little bit of Ascended, mainly because of the 2D hand-drawn art style they've got going on. I'm eager to try this one, but if it's too difficult, I might not bother touching it. Ace Combat 7. It's been a very long time since I've played any combat flight simulators, or any flight simulators for that matter. After the PS1 era, I never really found any that were interesting enough to me, so I generally ignored them. And the one time I did buy an Ace Combat game on Steam, which was Ace Combat Assault Horizon, it was after Games for Windows Live had gone down, so the game wouldn't let me play it. The fact that Ace Combat 7 was able to get my attention is reason enough to put it on this list. The visuals looked pretty good for an air combat sim, the music also sounded good along with the sound effects, and most importantly, the gameplay looks amazing. I'll definitely be giving this one a go. Whether it happens on day one or a little bit later is still to be decided. Last but not least, Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy. This game, or just Crash Bandicoot in general, is a very important game to me. It holds a place in my heart and always will. This has been on my radar pretty much the very first day it was announced. If any Sony game deserves a remake more than anything, it's Crash Bandicoot. I've already got mine pre-ordered, so I've locked in the PS4 theme as well, and I'm getting 3 games for like $50, which isn't too bad. It might even be cheaper on the release day. I know well and truly well that a big part of the joy for me will come purely from the nostalgia, and I'm expecting the game to lack some detail and charm that the older ones had. Either way, it was shown at E3 and should definitely be an eye-catcher for both gamers new and old to the franchise. So, that's it. That's all I have for this particular video. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of My Open World. If you did, please let me know in the comments down below. And just a reminder, if you have any games that you liked at E3, let me know in the comments below. I would like to see them. I genuinely would. And it'd be nice to see if there's any that I missed out on this list, or any that I didn't put on the list, or if there's any games on the list that you also liked. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as usual, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you in the next video.